Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Right, so as always, now that we have done full exploration of Act 8.1, it's time for the guides. For those of you who are the most impatient and have places to be, things to see, you can just take a snapshot of this little write-up. I will show this later on in the video as well, but before that, I will go over every line, explain it a bit more in detail, as well as with every boss. So, if you're in a rush, you're lucky. Here's your write-up, and if you do have some time, well then let's go through it one by one. So let's start with the arguably easiest path in this entire quest, which is Weapon, Cosmic Control Shard, Disarm, Intercept, and Damage over time effects, and Rust and Ruin. This is an absolute monster lane for pretty much most of the skill champions that do damage over time effects. You don't have to use a skill champion. Basically, anybody with damage over time effects will do great here. But in my experience, Kingpin, Mole Man was an absolute MVP, as well as Black Cat, Black Widow, Deadly Origins, Elsa, especially with this assisted intercept. The entire idea of this path is just get in and intercept, and you're going to be doing basically 300% of your original damage. Rust and Ruin actually helps you out more by enabling you to access willpower healing. And the entire path is just extremely rapid and extremely quick. I definitely enjoyed this one, and it was very easy to do. Moving on to the next one, we have Galvanized Lane, where you do kind of have to play around the lane, but you do have this Reckless Abandon for mutant attackers, and it basically means it's kind of cheesable. It's one of those CAV-EQ lanes. So for me here, what worked best was OG Storm, especially once you make a horseman. Other Storm works extremely well also because you can capitalize on Galvanized Lane, hit opponent's block on purpose whilst the shock phase is active, and get a ton of shocks placed on you. That's ton of prowesses. With ton of prowesses, you knock them down, you go unblockable, and you strike them, you gain furies, and in between a lot of furies and a lot of prowesses, you do massive special attacks. On top of that, you can still use your Archangels, you can still use your APOC, you can still use Bishop and plenty of other champions. Colossus can do exceedingly well on these lanes as well. Just be aware that you will have to kind of like dance around this Galvanized Lane, where either opponent is going to be unblockable, in which case you either need to intercept or just stall, or you can't hit their block. As long as you understand Galvanized Lane, this isn't a bad path to do and take. Now, this next one was somewhat annoying. It's basically just Rage Lane where you can't nullify. That is it. You do not really get any attack increases and stuff like that, so it kind of was a bit slower. But on the bright side, because of Rage, you can absolutely cheese it with Miles Morales. Other than that, it's just sneaking in under the Rage, utilizing damage over time effects. Champions like Archangels, again, Black Widow, Deadly Origins, Human Torch for both of the bunch of these, so on and so forth. Tigra did just fine for me as well, keeping Rage in bay and putting on those Raptures. So it's kind of like damage over time effects, and watch out to sneak under the Rage damage cap. Neutralize helped there in several fights too. Moving on to the next path. Now we have Precision Parry and Parry Vulnerability, Pumping Iron, and a good defense. The entire idea here is you want champions with a lot of buffs, more specifically a lot of precision buffs. Unfortunately, in the game, we don't really have all that many champions who have access to a ton of precision buffs. Therefore, the best way how to deal with this path in itself is to kind of cheat. And let me explain what I mean. Just bring in, ideally, 2 copies of Magneto House of X, 5 and 6 star, and apply it for every single fight. Or if you only have 1, then apply it for the harder fights, which would probably be the Labyrinth Ultron, the Warlock, and the Kingpin. Because passive parry stun ignores and bypasses this precision parry lane. Other than that, basically, unless you have a bunch of precision buffs active on you, opponents are parry immune, and also they take like that less damage unless you have buffs active. So again, the best way to deal with this is just bring in anybody that has 3 buffs and a couple copies of Magneto House of X. If you can't do that, then there's always Hercules, who can access 3 parries or 3 prowess on his level, 3 precisions on his level 1. Also, Shang-Chi works quite well. So those would be the recommended counters. If you can't get your hands on any of those champions, then it's best to just pretend that opponents are stun immune and bring in champions that have at least 3 buffs. So then it's basically your cosmic bonanza and pretend that opponents are stun immune, but then you don't get the damage bonus and fights are slightly harder. But as long as you have the buffs active, you can still do fine enough damage. Moving on to the next lane, pass the buck, that's gonna sting, and buff toggle unstoppable. Now pass the buck, when the attacker gains a bar of power, they are afflicted with power sting debuff for 10 seconds. Intercepting the defender while this power sting is active removes it and inflicts it to the defender instead. And you have buff toggle unstoppable and foresight. So easiest way to deal with this is just bring in power sting characters yourself. So that is Mr. Fantastic plus She-Hulk and any science champions, or Spider-Ham, or Yellow Jacket, or Ant-Man now. Or you can utilize the pass the back plus foresight. The annoying thing there is going to be buff toggle unstoppable. So you want champions that deal with unstoppable or can help you intercept at any time that you want. So slow characters are quite useful here, or champions like Mr. Negative and Elsa and Mole-Man and Killmonger also can get the job done by letting you intercept safely. So again, remember, there are 2 options how to deal with this lane. Number 1, you want to rely on intercepting a lot and getting power stings on yourself and then transferring them on opponent. Or number 2, just bring in power sting champions and it's going to be a fairly quick and easy lane as well. But if you don't have power sting champions, you don't need to stress out. As long as you can intercept, you'll be fine. To make it easier, bring in the unstoppable counters, and that's it. And moving on to the final lane, we have this punish heavy attack lane, but this one isn't as cheesy as the previous one because staggering, beauty, and prey and the weak in themselves don't really do too much on this lane, but we do have Mephisto and we do have Red Goblin who are incinerate immune. So domino cheese is a bit more limited on this lane, even though you can still easily domino 4 of these fights. But other than that, again, just bring in pretty much anybody that has a good amount of heavy attack damage, Captain America, Infinity War, be that May, or anybody else, and just spam heavy attacks. Just be aware that you do want somebody that is incinerate immune against that Mephisto, and also be aware of this Dormammu because the degen is big. So Spider-Man 2099 or Power Control Champion or something that can let you do this fight without gaining any buffs, or let you deal with a degen in form of like Spider-Ham or Mr. Negative or something of the sorts, where you can actually deal with the degen. So either don't trigger the degen or have a counter to it. Okay, let's move on to the bosses. Now, Mr. Sinister, and this is a straightforward, it's a Mr. Sinister fight. Even easier in reality because of technical suppression. Whenever you use a special attack as a tech champion, as a tech attacker, you inflict heal block on the defender if one there is not inflicted already. The only thing that makes this fight somewhat difficult is Vigorous Assault, which again is kind of helped out by technical suppression. And that's it. He's going to be periodically unblockable. Other than that, any tech champion pretty much works. And obviously the best counters are somebody like Nimrod and Warlock and Omega Sentinel. But even if you don't have those, as long as you have a tech champion, you can get this fight done. Just be aware of the unblockable. Now, this Diablo fight is actually arguably the easiest boss here because this Biotic Adoption Venom lane is actually awesome because that poison doesn't stack and that poison is very, very weak to a point where you can heal it from willpower. So you do not need a poison immune champion. You do not need a shock champion. Only node that you really need to work around here is the Riot node, where he's going to start unblockable, and whenever you knock him down with a special attack, he's going to go unstoppable, and then you need to knock him down with a heavy attack, and he's going to go unblockable again. That is it. There is shock vulnerability to help you do extra damage, so you can, for instance, use somebody like Black Widow Deadly Origins, and just never knock him down. Fight unblockable Diablo. It's not too hard, because it's Diablo, and you're going to do 200% damage, and you're going to be healing with willpower the entire time. Additionally, you can abuse the fact that you're getting that poison placed on you at all times. And for that, bring in Ghost, bring in Kingpin, and let your damage go in hyperdrive as well. Very straightforward. Again, do not be afraid of this. You do not have to bring in a poison immune champion. You do not have to bring in a champion of shock. You can bring in virtually any champion. Just play around this Riot node. Speaking of the Riot node, You can bring in Dr. Doom and infinitely slap Diablo. In order to do that, you just want to use your special attack whilst the Diablo is kind of like getting close to the corner in order to be able to switch him from unblockable buff to unstoppable buff, and then just start spamming heavy attacks, and you're going to be consistently stunning him if your Doom is Sig 200, and you can just slap away the entire day and the fight's going to be over. Now, this Psycho Man's quite annoying, and the key to this fight is actually in the defender abilities, not in the nodes. What you need to be aware of is that Psycho Man's concussions, his personal concussions, don't do anything at all if you have 3 buffs active. So you need champion with 3 buffs. That's kind of like the main requirement. Because everything else here also reduces your ability accuracy, and then Psycho Man can capitalize, and then the fight can be absolutely nightmarish. If you have like Odin's pre-fights and OG Thor, this is going to be very, very fun fight. But the point is that the thing to worry about here is 6th Sense, where he can auto-block. But whenever you hit his block or get auto-blocked, you get a concussion placed on you. And whenever you parry, you have Hard Knock life. However, because you can get a concussion on you, you also can kind of supercharge this Impatience node. So I'm going to go over the counters there in the write-up, but it's still, again, Odin or Cosmic Champions with Odin's pre-fight. Still Null plus Odin's pre-fights. Hercules can do this fight well. Then we also have OG Thor with Odin's pre-fights and a couple more. Right, so let's take a look at the write-up yet again. Weapon Intercept, it's Damjo time. Nick, Maulman, Kingpin, Black Cat, Black Widow, Deadly Origins, Else, so on and so forth. Galvanized is a mutant lane. Storms, APOC, Magneto, House of X does very, very well there. Colossus, Bishop. Now in Rage, we have Miles Cheese, Cable, APOC, AA, Tigra, or Dot champions basically to sneak under the Rage. Precision Parry, ideally double copies of Magneto, House of X, or anyone with buffs, plus anyone with buffs. Herc, Shang-Chi, and so on and so forth. That's gonna sting. Mr. Fantastic plus She-Hulk, ideally Yellow Jacket, Spider-Ham, Ant-Man, or Intercept champions. Remember that. Or Intercept champions, and you can throw away that power sting to the opponent by Intercept. Weapon heavy attack, Domino Trinity, Herc, Torch, She-Hulk, Wasp, Cap, Infinity War, so on and so forth. Boss is Mr. Sinister, basically Tex, that's it. Diablo, again, you can use almost any champion, but some of the suggestions would be Kingpin, Ghost, Black Widow, Deadly Urgents, Nimrod, Nebula, Warlock has access to Shock as well. Why not? Psycho Man, OG Thor, Angela at high Sig, ideally with Odin's pre-fights. Herc, Odin, Gamora can do quite well. Corvus plus Proxima, Null plus Odin. Hopefully that answers your questions and helps you out with 813. And I shall see you guys soon. Later. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next